Jennifer and everybody were kind enough to let me present a very high level on digital transformation, particularly in the HR space. So when I say it's high level, I have 20 minutes and I'm going to speak fast, flow through the deck, but we'll cover a lot real fast in typical New York fashion. A quick intro for those that I haven't met yet. I am located in Atlanta, Alpharetta, specifically Georgia. And my most recent effort was to spearhead HR through a 2 billion joint venture with AGCO. And as Jennifer mentioned, I've left AGCO and will be working as Chief Human Resources Officer for a company on Monday. So next time you meet me, it'll be official, but it's not quite official yet. My background is actually I graduated in accounting and then worked for KPMG, then went over to Accenture and then left New York, came to Georgia, and I skipped a whole bunch. I headed up HR after I left Accenture to spearhead HR for first Bloomberg, and I grew them from like 500 to 5,000, and then for Martha Stewart, and I was brought in for her pre-IPO and post-IPO HR build. We then moved to Georgia, and I hung out my own shingles so I could raise my kids, and a lot of the work was system selection and implementation, and most of it was UKG, yay. And so UKG said, why don't you come work for us? So I did. I led their premier global delivery group. I worked with phenomenal people like Hervé, and we implemented the system for the largest, most complex customers. I then left to be client side, so I project managed, I sysconfigured, I did sys administration as head of HRIS for a lot of organizations, and the most recent was a lot of these are high growth companies. I love that because I get to put my finger in it. But they're mostly PE backed, and the effort at AGCO was a PE consulting firm pulled me away and said, come work with us again. So I did. And now I'll find myself full circle back in a 360 role. The superpower I always say is I'm a technologist and a practitioner. And that's a very rare blend of somebody who has built and done HR as well as build the systems around that, because a digital transformation in HR can't happen without a process transformation. So today I'm going to talk high level digital transformation. There are way more experienced people here who can talk about it, but then it'll segue into HR. So what is digital transformation? At a very high level, it's not just implementing technology, but adopting it. And there's a little bit of a difference where all your processes are impacted, both digitally and in terms of efficiency and productivity. And you basically have to rethink the way you do operations if you really do a digital transformation. I'll give you an example. One company that we implemented full suite UKG had 6 acquisitions. So we took 6 legacy HR systems and brought them into UKG 1 and 3 time systems into 1. And we couldn't have done that unless we did a business process transformation. So every process was standardized and harmonized. So whenever you're doing a system implementation, you're typically doing a transformation of sorts. And this is why I say your processes will change, your business model will change, the way that you use data will change. There's just a lot of technology out there right now. Everybody's talking about Gen AI, but there's so many. And of course, if you're in the crypto world, you know, blockchain. If your kids game, you know, metaverse. And of course, everybody knows drones and cloud computing. But there really is a lot out there that everybody scratches their head and says, what is this? How's it going to impact me? Is it going to change my job? Is my job going to go away? And in every AI seminar I've attended, no, your job's not going to go away. The human element can't go away. but it's going to become more efficient, and you have to be thinking about how you're going to upskill and reskill yourself and your team to get there. I know, Hervé, I don't know if you want to take 2 seconds and talk about all the great work you're doing in AI with organizational network analysis, but it's what I'm reading on your end is phenomenal. How do you see that playing out here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to take away from your thunder, Lori. Lori, you're doing so great, but I will say this. I love how you've painted and defined digital transformation. I love the fact that you've accounted for everything that falls within the AI umbrella, because it's not just about generative AI. I love the fact that you're focusing on putting people first. So it's not humans in the loop, it's AI in the loop. I think that in the past, we used to think of people as being T-shaped associates, right? They have broad skills and a knowledge spike. I think we're going to see a new evolution, which is the augmented worker, right? Somebody whose profile at work is half person, or maybe 9/10ths person and 1/10 AI, right? All of us will do different work augmented by AI in different ways and levels. So I'm really excited about the work that you're going to talk about today, because you're going to touch on all those topics and more. And I'm humbled that you find my writing inspirational. So thank you for the call out.
Yeah, if you haven't read his articles, it's phenomenal. You need to read it. He's a great resource. So if you think of all this different type of technology coming into the world, when I say it impacts every part of the corporation, it really does. You know, if you stick with recruiting, everybody's familiar. If you're looking for a job and you don't know this, you have to have the AI keywords in your resume or you won't get to the top. If you do apply for a job, you'll see a chat bot. Sometimes there's virtual reality and onboarding. There definitely is in training, Amanda. You'll see a ton of the augmented reality or the virtual reality and training. Data in every area of the company is huge, and it's moving more from the historical, what's my turnover, to the predictive, which is, well, we're going to predict for you what your turnover is going to be based on all these factors we're seeing. You'll see robotics, the robotic process, automation in obviously things like operations, but you'll see it in a lot of places. You'll see drones and logistics, in risk management. I know Brian does a lot with compliance, and I'm sure Brian has a thought or two on AI in that world and threat detection. Of course, those in IT are probably well along on the path of understanding cybersecurity and all of that. In sales, your customer relationship management tools are very much AI built and providing you with your next opportunity. So why is this important? Well, if you know it impacts the entire organization, keep in mind that by 2030, they anticipate that there'll be 50 billion connected devices, 50 billion. And what's happening, what we're seeing is that only 16% of executives are saying that what the efforts that they've taken so far to adopt technology, even put AI and all that aside, but to really maximize it is not really resulting in successful improvements. Additionally, for those CFOs out there, 67% haven't seen the rewards, the ROI on all the money being spent on, and I can share this deck, being spent on technology. So why do we see such a high failure rate? I'm going to tell you number one. My number one is change management. I know a bunch of heads here will buckle on that one. One of them is change management. If you take this bottom 10 and this top 30, you get 40%. Managing change, resistance to change, increases user adoption, maximizes the efficiency and the productivity of the transformation you're trying to do. But the other is a strategy, and I'm going to walk you through how you can build a digital transformation strategy. Mercer Group put out in 2023 that if you look at the different types of technology coming out here, all of them are key drivers of digital transformation. There's so much out there. You have to transform. It's in every area of your business. But if you look at the technology that's been adopted the most, obviously cloud computing, that makes sense. But if you look at Gen AI, that's 96, or I'm sorry, AI, that's 96% are if you take these, we are using it limitedly, we're absolutely at scale, or we've sort of adopted it. 96% have AI in their organization. So if you're not familiar with AI, take a LinkedIn class on AI, I mean, there's a million Coursera and all those on AI. Get familiar. Upskilling will be the most critical thing of your talent. So what are CEOs focused on? 72% say technology, 38 on AI, and 34 on the digital core. So no wonder HR is a 95% transformation efforts. HR is spinning its wheel to keep up with all that's coming in, right? You know, the employee experience is most critical. In the gate, journey map that employee experience from even prior to hire to retire, it's attracting, and what kind of AI or chatbots or the marketing that uses these tools to get your candidates in the door. So from an HR perspective, 70% are optimizing their existing systems, and 45 or 52% are replacing them. So 65%, Gartner Group 2023 says 65% of CHROs are saying the lack of the right HR technology infrastructure is killing their ability to attract, to retain, to create a great employee experience. So that's really why HR must embrace the digital transformation. We've got to make self-service so easy, and we can, and intuitive. We've got to think about the employee experience, and upskilling will be the biggest thing of your HR team, as well as every job. I don't know if you guys read Mark Efron and David Ulrich, they're all HR, gurus. And he put out about skills, upskilling, and companies are going through huge efforts to identify the skills with them. And everything I read about, it doesn't have anything about the digital upskilling that needs to happen. So something to keep in mind. And of course, we have to increase our digital maturity. How do we go about an HR transformation or any transformation? You could adopt this process for any digital transformation. Got to create the case for change. You got to define your strategy, then work against your strategy, implement and track it. All the while, which is why this is a big one, you've put change management across the board and you've engaged your stakeholders. This isn't just an HR only thing. It isn't just an IT only thing. It's across the board. So how do you go about and make your case for change? Well, after you've culled all your information together, you got to pull the executives in. You need high level sponsorship from these executives. Can't do it without that. And, one pager saying, hey, we have to, it's the digital world is here. And our maturity isn't that great. So you might want to do an executive summary that includes a lean business case, which might have the pros and cons of it, definitely the costs. It'll be major change impact. You keep going. And of course, I'm always about change, ProSci certified. So I like, as many here are, you want to always incorporate, how do I tell them about the change through the organization? Because you're not the only change going on, right? The second part of that strategy is, or the digital transformation process is you got to develop your strategy. So from a digital perspective, you want to do an assessment. You can hire a PwC and EY to do these assessments. I built one for a company and then we did it. You think of all the digital core competencies that have to exist, and I'll show you an example. You do it across the competencies, you do it across the systems, you can self-assess, you can partner assess, and then you get your results and you benchmark them against current state and future state, do a gap analysis and say, okay, so what is our roadmap? And it's right here that you get your 3-year roadmap. You could go 5 too, but I'm a 3-year kind of gal. And I'm not going to talk about this upskilling anymore, but this is so critical. Those that develop this strategy, who go through a digital maturity assessment, are 2.5 times more likely to see the benefits of what they're doing from a digital perspective. And this might be something that you would see coming out of your digital maturity assessment tool. You have it by competency. You can have it by system. You identify your gaps. You have to know what you have to use, what you can't use, or what you do have to uh, implement. And your scorecard will tell you in this, oops, I forgot to take name off that. I need to take name off that. In that company's instance, they absolutely did not adopt globally. Domestically, they were fine, but what it proved was globally, they were not. Also, they were still in back office. They shouldn't have been in back office. They should have been in web. That's how old they had UKG for 17 years. They needed a digital maturity assessment. But in another example with another company, we were able to say, what's your current state and target state? And you'll see the biggest area that we had to work on for HR was getting the data to help them make decisions. They had pretty dashboards, but the data was bad. And if your data is bad, it doesn't matter what analytics comes out because you have bad data. So you got to watch that. And there's a whole bunch of digital maturity levels. You can go to a bunch of different models. I use this particular one. Most of the companies I dealt with would be here. Yeah, they're using some automation but none of it is giving them data decision. It's not driving that. None of them have a digital innovative culture. So you really want to move them up. When all is said and done, you end up with your 3-year roadmap. You pick that year that you're working on. You absolutely do an impact versus effort analysis, typically by quarter. You start driving those projects. You never ever want to be in high effort, low impact. Your best is high impact, low effort, but most of them will sit in this upper right quadrant for sure when it comes to automation. And you start tracking your projects. You make sure that you implement them and you get going. So if I were to take one of them, say an HCM implementation, pulling on from my UKG years, I would tell you that the very first thing you need to know is do your research. Now, this I'm pulling from one of the million decks, but there's Workday, Oracle, SAP, and there's tons of the Gartner Magic Quadrant used to be the main source. Now you can do, I think it's nuclear research. There's a whole bunch of sources out there that evaluate your system. So if you're going to go down the path of an HCM implementation, you absolutely do your research. You can RFP, that would make sense. You should find out what your need is. If it's payroll, it might not be UKG. If it's global payroll, I don't know if it's UKG. I know they just bought Amidas, but that's iffy. Anyway, you have to know your world and you have to get in there. And then once you say, okay, I'm going with this system, you have to say, well, am I just doing core HR? Am I doing payroll? Am I bolting on succession planning, performance management? Am I doing it all at once, big bang? Or am I doing it in phases? Well, who's going to do this? Who's funding this? Who decides who's doing this? And these are the lot of questions. I've sat where HR makes the decision. I've sat where IT makes the decision. I've sat where both of them make the decision. You really need to know, make sure that executive sponsorship that I was talking about earlier in your strategy is on board so they can sell it because they'll make it visible too, which is what you want. And they can do a lot of the communications as well. So you need to ask yourself a lot of questions. And when you get to the point, yes, I've decided I'm going with this, you then decide you have to get to contracts. And one of the decisions you'll make is whether the vendor's implementing it or you have an implementation partner. Then you have 2 contracts you have to do. And there are all sorts of things you should think about with contracts. But the one thing I'll tell you is, I'll give you a little insight into one experience I negotiated with an IP, an implementation partner. They couldn't believe I negotiated fixed fee. They had never done it, but I did because I knew how many hours it would take by role and how long it would take to do this. So I understood the client side and I understood the roles on their side. And I negotiated fixed fee and they ended up losing $250,000 on fixed fee. So contract negotiations are a critical part. When you get there, I don't know why that happened. Your next, I'll just take it off. What that box did show is you absolutely need executive sponsorship and a governance and escalation path. So that means maybe it's not just your CHRO, CIO, maybe it's the CEO, all having buy-in at that executive. Then you have a leadership group, and that might be, the people that head payroll, HR, or, it just depends on how your organization is structured. And they really are the ones making the daily decisions in the project. And then you have your work stream leads. So you have your steering committee, your program leadership, and you should absolutely structure a team like this. You will always need people from all these areas, depending on what you're doing. Don't ever forget IT, don't ever forget finance, and don't ever forget data and reporting. And change management, of course, is so, so critical. So as you go through an HR implementation, you got to think of the triple constraint, which is timeline, budget, and resources. I tell you, resources, they're gung-ho in the beginning, project fatigue sets in, other projects come in. If you don't have resource commitment from their bosses, your project's going to lag. You absolutely have to have the weekly calls. Each project team has to do their call, and you do a project tracker holding them to it. Accountability is huge. I don't ever implement without a project tracker and the calls with each team. And I have a scorecard going up to leadership so that they know I document all the decisions. Of course, you have your raid log, or radio as they call it now. So make sure you're using all of these tools as you're going through it. Be aware of the critical points in a launch methodology. This is UKG's, I'll just be frank, but most of the work days looks almost like this. They call it a little different. Dayforce looks just like it. They call it a little different, but you have your planning phase, and this star is the contract. Contract is critical. Data collection. I can't tell you how many times I have collected data from clients and their data was bad. Garbage in, garbage out. Oh, and they signed off on it. So you really have to make sure that you're forcing the client to get really good data, or any digital transformation is moot if the data stinks. I mean, you might as well stop there. Also, the requirements. So we're talking payroll requirements. Do they have shift differentials? What are the premium pays? How about time? So those data requirements are another critical point. Data conversion. Hardest part that they all have, because as soon as that happens, they have to maintain 2 systems till you go live. So a critical thought there is, let's not keep this period open forever. And then testing. Oh, I can tell you that clients have come to the table with like 10 test cases. Can you imagine? You really have to make sure your client or your organization is doing smoke testing, user acceptance testing, system testing, the functionality testing. And then the customer service at the end is really important. But none of that happens without process transformation. So you can implement a system, but if you didn't ask your client to look at their processes, then their adoption of that system won't achieve its max potential. I'll give you an example. A client I had 47 PTO policies. They were only a 5,000 company, 47 PTO. So we had to do the whole analysis to get them down to a couple. Every time they had some new group come in, they grandfathered them. So you don't want to build 47 PTO policies. So that all got looked at. And there are many different scenarios where I've been in that we've changed process, policy, procedure. And you really want to take a look at that. And a lot of times when I do this, I impact other systems such as help desk. So now I have to figure out if employee has a password issue, are they going through help desk and then to the sysadmin? If I change the recruiting process and the onboarding process, which always happens, I end up changing the background check process. I ended up going out to RFPing background check providers. So you absolutely, if you remember in the beginning, I said digital transformation is not just the system, but also the process. You have to harmonize your processes, even if you think they're the greatest. A good way to look at processes is to map a journey experience from hire to retire. What's the first touch that an employee has in your organization? And as they go through all the different things from hire to retire, what are the pain points that you might see? And if this is current state, what's your future state going to look like? What might that look like? And where are the changes and how does that impact your system? And all of this process transformation happens simultaneously with the digital transformation, and you got to get it done in so many weeks, starting from plan to deploy. So you really, really want to think about that. As I mentioned, change management is so critical. The project management is the technical side, the change management is the people side. I worked for one client, we had 1,000 communications in the communication plan, 1,000. Now it was global, but it was 1,000 comms. Most people underestimate the comms they need. Training, I've built training decks. I've built them about the system. I've built them about logging in. You can't just rely on the training that's given to you. You want to customize it. You got to think about it if it's global, if it's by country. There's a lot to think about in change management. And the reason I'm such a, and anybody who's pro-sci familiar will know, you're 6 times more likely to meet your objectives if you have. Hervé, I'm going to stop and let you speak to the crowd. You are a resident expert. What do you want to say about change management?
I mean, change management makes a difference. It makes the difference between failure and success, really. I mean, most technology implementations just focus on the technicalities of it. Did we deliver on time and on budget? But the real value is making sure that people are prepared for the change, know what's going to change for them, are bought into it, and that they're able to use the systems to their fullest, right, after they go live. Not only that, but typically when you implement something, you're implementing the smallest footprint because you want them to expand capability. And if people can't get it the first time, they're not going to get it the second or the third time. So, per this chart, which I won't read back to you, change management makes all the difference between enduring success and just really failure, to be honest.
Spot on, exactly. And the other thing that you should keep in mind when you employ change management, I read an article that said PwC interviewed, I don't know, like 1,000 CEOs, and they said change agility is the #1 skill that would make their organization successful. So the more your employees get comfortable with change and the better your organization manages change, that agility defines the success of the organization. And really what it's all about is getting this cycle of change could relate to death, relate to a job change. You could be in job transfer right now going, holy smokes, I was just laid off. Well, what's in it for me for this job to, oh yeah, I got it. I'm totally committed to my new job. It could be about anything, but as it relates to digital transformation, you want to take the employees from the with them, what's in it for me, to I got it. And to that example, Hervé was saying, if an employee can't log in the first time, they might bug you the second time, and then they won't log in. They won't ever log in. They'll email or put in a request for you to tell them, can you pull down my W-2? Can you tell me why my pay is wrong? Rather than enabling them to go answer these questions themselves.
Lori,
And
Lori,
yeah.
shameless plug. Um, I spearheaded the creation of this slide. This is the slide that I worked
Woo!
with Rod and others on.
See, I told
And
you what he puts
so
together is really good. I
this is
told, it
mine.
says down here the source, but it doesn't say Hervé. I'm changing that.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is a great slide. I use it all the time. I'll tell you, I steal shamelessly from
cool.
good sources like you.
Very cool.
And as he mentioned, you want your employees to adopt any system. It could be Snow, ServiceNow. It could be Zendesk. It could be, UKG Workday. It could be iSIMS for recruiting. It could be anything. You want them to get on it fast, and you want them to know the system so well they maximize it all. So change management, so critical. So in sum, what are the key factors for digital transformation? Build your business case, get your executives on board, know your costs. Do your digital transformation strategy. To do that, you should do a digital maturity assessment test. Identify the way that you're going to track your initiatives. A lot of people say, okay, I got my 3-year roadmap, and then nobody owns anything. You really have to own it like an implementation. Make sure you have that leadership governance, make sure they're communicating about it, make sure they're talking about it all the time. It's so critical. And employee change management. So what should you walk away with? You got to do digital transformation in whatever area of the organization you're in. And you can't get away from it anymore. And the primary reason you can't get away from it anymore is because all these different things are entering our world if they aren't already here. AI's automating processes. It is. Predictive analytics are forecasting now. Contracts are being automated. You talk about people using ChatGPT, and I don't know that that's really good, but contracts are being automated. Cybersecurity, we know that. Digital twins, where you basically have a physical and a virtual copy of any of your physical assets, your anything. Augmented reality, virtual reality, it's already here. In fact, I have a VR sitting right over there in my office. And ethical, I read an article and I did a post on it. And if you could read that article, you should. There's some key positions in HR, and one of them is ethics on AI. So those roles in HR are going to change in any part of your organization. They're likely to change as well. So thank you for listening. I hope it was informative, and I'll open it up to any questions.
Hey, this is Brian. Lori, fantastic job. Number one, really deep, really, insightful. I definitely would like to steal some of those slides. So hopefully you'll be able to send that deck out to everyone.
I will.
I think one of the takeaways I'm thinking I heard from you was that the old school thought of the 80-20 rule still applies when it comes to upfront discovery and design versus execution. That you still need to spend time, not so much that it's analysis paralysis, but that you have to have an idea of where you want to go, how you're going to get there, sell that to the executives, get top-down commitment, and plan out the run and then execute. Whereas a lot of teams today, I'm finding, don't want to sit and be patient enough to really do that work. And as a result, they start to run really quick, and they think that the idea of agile kind of lets you quickly pivot as you're going along. And what I found is that they continuously, don't get to where they want to be. And so that planning up front is important. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. I equate it to, if you were buying a house, would you not do your due diligence beforehand? Say it's a 400 half million, 2 million house. You're not going to do your due diligence on that. So, we're asking companies, just because they have deep pockets doesn't mean you shouldn't do the due diligence. I don't think you should stay there forever, but you should do enough of it.
And I think it applies to the smaller companies and larger companies, right? It's, the value of your dollar, the opportunity cost. So, great job. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Brian. All right. Thank you, everybody.
So there was a side, I don't know if you saw the side conversation that was going on. Someone asked about any certifications in AI. When you were talking about AI training, they're asking about certifications. And a couple of comments that came back is LinkedIn Learning has some, it looks like LinkedIn Learning has partnered with Microsoft and is offering some courses, and MIT has a certification program. I'm a little bit familiar with it. I had a team member who attended the MIT digital transformation, a couple of the digital transformation certification. She took advantage of that. So any others that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mentioned the LinkedIn one. There's a lot out there. Like, you can even go on Coursera and just find anyone that's specific to your need. Maybe you need Gen AI. All my research for the CHRO that I was working for was on Gen AI and HR. But once I got in that world, I could go 80 million different ways to find out what I needed. So I would explore on, in the HR world, Mercer's a big talk about it. Jason Arowitz, I think is his last name, does a thing on LinkedIn all the time, a newsletter. But it really depends on, I'm not in blockchain, I'm not in RPA, I'm mostly just in Gen I. So if anybody's in any of the others.
I just put a quick comment in there too. I haven't checked out their curriculum recently. I can't imagine it hasn't been updated to include Einstein, but Salesforce Trailhead is a free program. I mean, it's obviously Salesforce focused, but they've got, you know, some bolt-ins, you know, to their products that are AI focused, and you can probably get some good learning from that. And Trailhead's just a really good program overall.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Any other questions? Any other comments?
The only other certification for Amanda, since you mentioned change management, was ProSci. Get your ProSci certification.
All right. Well, thank you, Lori. That was such great information. I really appreciate that. And if you want to share the presentation, we do have a space out there where we can put that information out there. So yeah, feel free to send it over to me and I'll make sure it gets out there, and then we'll upload, we'll put the video out there as well. So for anyone who wants to watch it again, or anyone who missed it. So just a couple other things. I can't remember if we talked about this in the last meeting. We do have a link for a call for presenters. And I will make sure it gets sent out again. But if you have a really great topic that you would like to, you come in just like Lori did today and speak about, or you know another great speaker that you think would make a really good addition to the group and would like to come in and talk about a topic that you think would be great for the group. We do have a process for submitting for that. So I will make sure that link gets out there. Actually, let me just go ahead and drop it in the chat as well. So you have it, you know, just in case. Because we are in the process of setting up our speakers from now through the end of the year. And so we're looking for anybody who has really great content, something really interesting to share to the group. So anybody that you know that might fit that bill, let us know, and we'd love to hear from them. All right. Before we wrap it up, we're almost at time. Before we wrap it up, does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything else that you want to share?
I'll just remind everyone that you all are considered contributing members. We're startup, we're in our infancy. We need any of your feedback, any of your recommendations, any of your support to help make this community kind of a great place for all of us to be. So please reach out, please tap us. We welcome it, we want you, we need you to build this thing. So jump in, please jump in.
Yes, absolutely. I second that and third that and fourth that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know summers get tricky. People are taking vacations and people have other plans. So the fact that you took time out of your busy schedule to join us today is fantastic, and we so appreciate it. We love seeing you. And go out and check out the next one. The next one will be in August the 14th, I think is the date. So it's out there on the platform. So go check it out and go ahead and RSVP. And can't wait to see you. Can't wait to see you at the next one.